Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to yet another interesting and exciting lesson. It is a new day, it is a Monday, and we are continuing with our lessons. So, this will be lesson number 27 for our subject. You know what time it is? It's time for English Grade 8 First Additional Language. All right. I think you already know who I am, so there are my details there, and I will not spend much time to introduce myself. So, I'm still your teacher, your presenter for the subject. Let us get started. I hope everybody had a wonderful and amazing weekend, and you are ready for the new week to learn new things this week. So, yes, this is what we would be doing today. Today's lesson will be on the features of literary text, but today we will be focusing on a novel or a story. If you remember well, in lesson 21, yes, in lesson 21, we were doing literary text, but at that lesson, we were focused on dramas and we also focused on the play, okay? So, yes, that was in lesson 23 when we focused on drama and play. You remember? Then today we will be focusing on a novel or a story. Remember what I said, guys? We did say that the way you read literary text is not the same. The way you read a novel, it is not the same as the way you read a drama. It is not the same as the way you read a play, okay? So that is the reason why we are going through all these different types of literary text, okay? Like I have said one time that reading really is like you being a DIY man, you know? You have to have your own toolbox, and in your toolbox, you need to have a pair of pliers, screwdrivers, nuts, and bolts, and screws, and every other things that which you need. So it is also the same with English that, you know, we all need all these different tools so that we are equipped at any point in time to use them, okay? And remember, the chat is open. If you have a question, if you have a concern, if you are lost, the chat is open for you to ask your question. Okay, all right. Like we do every time, before we go on to before we go on, before we go on with the content of the lesson of the day, then let us briefly recap on what we did in the previous lesson, which was lesson number 26. Right. So in lesson number 26, this is what we did. In lesson number 26, we learned about how to write a review of a novel or the review of a story. You remember that? And we went through some steps that which we need to take. And I also emphasized on the importance of using the writing process method. Do you remember the writing process method that we use every time we write transactional text, whether it is an essay or a letter or a CV or all those types of transactional letters? I did say that yes, we have to use the writing process method because it helps us to plan, it helps us to structure our thoughts, it helps us to be able to connect our ideas so that when we write, we will write a transactional text which would be coherent, which will have ideas which are linking with each other, and the person who reads it will be able to understand and they will be able to see and understand what we are trying to communicate. You know, because the challenge here is not with what you are trying to say. You, as the learner, you know what you want to say, But the biggest challenge here would be the person who reads what you have written. Will they also understand what you are trying to communicate? So that is the question. And that is why when we write things, we use the writing process method. Okay, right. I did stress about that, but what we did learn in the previous lesson, lesson 26, we learned about how to write a review of a novel or a story. Okay, I did say you write down the title of the story or the novel. And remember, I made an example. I said the title of the novel is The Adventures of Dr. X by J.D. Rem, where J.D. Rem is the author of that novel. And remember what I said, guys. Okay, remember what I said. There is no novel called The Adventures of Dr. X. Okay, I know there were some of you who are interested to look for it. One thing I would like to say is there is no such novel. There is no such novel, guys. Okay, therefore, please do not go around on Google or at the bookshops looking for this novel. It is not there. It does not exist. And if it's going to be there, it will be if I decide to write it because this title was my idea. Okay. So yes, I did say you write the title of the story as well as the author of that novel or that story. And I did say that in your review, you will summarize the plot of the story or the novel. Yes. And I did say that when you summarize your plot, remember you need to say something about the protagonist. Yes, you remember what is a protagonist? If you forgot, it's fine. You will learn again in today's lesson what a protagonist is. I also did say you should also say something about about antagonists, the conflict, as well as the climax. Okay, because these are the things which consist the plot of the novel. Okay, so because of that, you would need to say something about the protagonist, the antagonist, the conflict, as well as the climax. Right. So I also said you should also comment on the background and the setting of the story or the novel. Okay, you should say something about the background. You should say something about the setting of the story. Okay, yes. Remember, I will say it again. This novel there, The Adventures of Dr. X, it does not exist. That was my idea as I was trying to give you an example on the previous lesson, right? So remember also, I did say you should express your opinion of how good the story or the novel was. Okay, so if you think the story was good, tell us, how good was it, and also not only that, we also need you to give us the good reasons why you think that novel was good. Okay, remember, I always say that for whatever opinions that which you give, when your opinion is needed, it will also be good for you to give us your reasons for your opinions. Okay, because chances are we do not share your opinions. Okay, my opinion is not the same as your opinion. Okay, but if you give us the reasons, then we will understand why you have a certain opinion. Okay, yes. And then remember, we also said that at the end, write your name as the reviewer as well as the date. Okay, remember, even though you are a learner, but when you write the review, you become a reviewer. All right. Okay. So yes, this really was what lesson 26 was really all about when we learned about how to write a review of a novel or the review of a story. Okay. So if you still have questions about it, the chat is still open. You can ask me questions in the chat, and as soon as I see your question, I will get to it. Right. Let's go to the content of the lesson of the day. So we did go through this, why we need to read literary text. You will realize that reading literary text, it develops your aesthetic ability, right? Which is your ability to appreciate good things, your ability to appreciate beautiful words in English. You know, there are some words which we find in literary texts which are not there, which you will never find in your math textbook, which you will never find in your natural science textbook. Okay, yes. So another reason why we read literary text is to develop our imaginative ability. You know, sometimes, okay, many times, most times, you would realize that these literary texts, they do not have images. You know, so because of that, as you read there, you will have to use your own imagination. Okay, so if you read there that the bird was running and then it flew away towards the mulberry tree, what will happen is that in your mind you will think of a bird which runs, you will think of a bird which is flying, and you will think of a bird that will fly towards the mulberry tree. Okay, uh, so what you read will play in your mind. Okay, it will in your mind it will be like a movie. So you will be developing your ability to imagine things, right? Okay, and you will realize that by reading literary text, it also helps us to imagine our world and to empower us to understand the world around us. Okay, so I will not dwell on this because I said this when we were dealing with dramas or plays, so I will just quickly pass through it. This one as well, I will quickly pass through it. We went through it when we were learning about drama or plays, right? Yes, this is where we started. You know that with literary text, we can be able to identify similar things, you know, things such as persuasive language, emotive language that the authors may use, and things like that. Okay, so yes, this is the content of lesson 23 when we started with literary text. So I will not dwell on it. Let us go to something we haven't done before, something new. All right, okay. Now, the key features of literary text, okay. In general, literary texts have these features, you know, characters, action, dialogue, the plot, the conflict, the background, the setting, the narrator, as well as the theme or the message. Okay, so remember now what we are going to do now is you see all these features, these are the features of your novel or your story. You will realize that whatever story that which you read, it it, it has all these things. Okay, whatever story that which you read, it has all these features. Okay, so but now I am going to go through all these features and how they relate with a novel and how they relate with a story, you know. And if you were here when we were doing the drama and the play, you would realize that the key features of a novel or a story are different. Okay, you will realize that. Remember if remember that if remember that if you have a question, the group chat is open for you to ask your questions, and I promise you that I am here to help you. I will address every question that I see in the chat to help you understand the content of this topic. Okay? Okay. Remember, guys, please do not hesitate. The reason why I am here, it is because of you. If you are not here, I wouldn't be here either. So let's us work together. If there is something you do not understand, if you are lost, the chat is open. Please do not hesitate to ask your questions. And I promise you that as soon as I see your question in the chat, I will attend to it. Right. So these are the features in a literature text, right? So today we will be looking at these features in respect to novels and stories. Okay. I see there are some questions in the chat. Preston saying, what is the background? Okay, Preston, remember before we get to the background, we have to go through these features first. Because if I start with the background, then we will be more confused, okay? So please bear with me. Let me go through these key features in order, step by step, the way I written them down here. Because the way I wrote them here, it is the way they link with each other. And this is the way that will help all of us to better understand what today's lesson is about. Okay, thank you, Preston. Okay, so the first feature, which is the most important feature of a novel or a play, is the characters. Okay, you'll realize that any and every novel that which you have read has characters. Okay, so let us go through it. Okay, so what are characters? Characters are the people in the story. All right, the people in the story, the people in the novel, we call them characters. Okay, yes. Sometimes you will realize that with some novels, the characters there are not really people. You know, the characters there are not really humans. Okay, the characters there are not human beings. So in those cases, you will realize that the characters are animals. You know, maybe the characters are birds, fish, insects, lions, wild animals, domesticated animals, pets, and stuff like that. Okay, in in such cases, those characters we call them anthropomorphic characters. Why? Because anthropomorphic characters are those characters which are animals or objects which exhibit human characteristics. Okay, let me make this example. We know that the sound that a horse makes is a neigh, right? A horse neighs. That sound of, that is the sound of a horse. And we know that a horse has four legs, and we also know that a horse walks with those four legs. Okay, but you will find out that maybe in a story or in a novel, the horse walks on its two legs. Okay, you'll find that in that story the horse can talk. You find that in that story the horse can hold a glass. You find that in that story the horse can jump. You find that in that story the horse can do the things that a horse cannot do in real life. You find out that the horse can do the things that which we humans do. Okay, I see in the chat Natalie saying Madagascar. Yes, in that movie Madagascar, you have seen that zebra standing on its two legs. There's that zebra can talk. That zebra can hold a glass. And then you've also seen in the same movie a lion eating grass. So it is those things. So those characters we say they are anthropomorphic. So that word, the anthropomorphic, it means that they exhibit the characteristics of humans. Okay, we know that zebras can walk on their four legs. We know that zebras cannot walk on two legs. Sorry, we know that zebras cannot hold a glass. We know that zebras can talk. We know that lions are carnivores. Lions only eat meat. Lions never eat grass. No matter what happens, even if all the bugs, all the buffaloes, all the springboks can die, a lion will never eat grass. Eating grass, eating vegetation, eating herbs, that is something that we humans do. That is a human characteristic. Okay, so those characters which are animals, which are objects that exhibit human characteristics, we call them anthropomorphic characters. Okay, yes. Remember, guys, if some way, somehow I have lost you, you are lost, please remember to ask us your questions, and I am here to help you. All right. So, we still are on characters. The main characters in the story are called protagonists. Right? I will say it again. The main characters in the story are called protagonists. So if you hear or read the word protagonist, then you should remember that they are talking about the main character. So if this was a movie, the protagonist will be that person we call a starring, you know, it will be that person whose name appears first in the movie, you know, that will be your main character, that will be your protagonist. Okay, and you realize that the story really centers so much around the protagonist, right? Then there is another group of characters. So the characters that a protagonist are in conflict with are called antagonists. Okay, so this is something we usually see in stories or novels about superheroes. Okay, so you realize that the superhero is our protagonist, right? It is our main character, and the villain will become our antagonist. You know, there are a million of examples in such respects. There are many superheroes there. You know, you I mean, okay. For example, let me make example with Spider-Man 1. Okay, with the first, although it is a movie, but it was adapted from a novel, right? So in Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man is our main character, he is our protagonist, and the antagonist there is that green guy, the Green Goblin. You know, he is our antagonist because he is in conflict with our main character. All right. Okay, and then we have well-rounded characters, which are those people which are sometimes good and they are sometimes bad. All right. So I have a question from Helene. Helene asks, if the antagonist turns good at the end, does the antagonist turn into a well-rounded character? Hmm. Wow, that is a good question. So Helene is saying that is asking that if an antagonist, remember an antagonist is the bad guy, right? So if that bad guy turns good at the end, does that make the antagonist to become a well-rounded character? Not necessarily, Helene. Remember, a well-rounded character is like you and I. You know, it is like normal people. We know that ordinary people, how we are. You know, today is Monday. I woke up on the left side of the bed. You know, so now I am rude with everybody. I snap at everyone. I do not want to talk to anyone. You know, because I woke up on the left side of the bed. I have the Monday blues. Okay. Tomorrow is Tuesday, and Tuesday happens to be my favorite day. Then I'm very happy because my favorite show on TV will be playing tomorrow on Tuesday. You know. So well rounded characters are like that. You know, well-rounded characters, we can say they're really somewhere in the middle of being a protagonist and being an antagonist, you know, because with the protagonist, you say the protagonist really is the good person, okay, the antagonist really is the bad person. So well-rounded characters are somewhere in the middle, you know, they are not really good, they're not really bad, they're somewhere there in the middle. Okay, right. So we also have flat characters which seem too good or too bad. Okay, so a flat character is like that they are flat. They are either on one extreme, you know, and they although they are on either one of the extreme of being good or bad, but they are not necessarily protagonists or antagonists. All right. Okay. So so there are characters which represent a typical group of people, and those characters are stereotypes. Okay, there are many examples of that. So if our novel is about teenagers at school, usually those stereotypes characters will be those group of learners who are always reading, always at the library, wearing glasses, you know, like like nerds, you know. Those will be our stereotype. Those will be our stereotype characters. Another example could be, you know, those group of learners who bully other learners, you know. Yes, the bullies can also be stereotype characters. Then Then another thing is what the character says, what the character does, and also what the character thinks. It tells us more about that character. Okay. So if the character always says good things, if the character always says good things, they do good things, and they think about good things, then from there we can say, okay, then this character is a positive person. This character really is an optimist. Okay, something like that. Remember, if you have questions about characters, please, the chat is still open for you to ask a question. Are we all together? Okay, let's continue. Okay, action is what happens because of what is said by the characters. I think that is straightforward enough, so I will not dwell on it. I can just pass. So yes, we know an action is what happens in the story. That's the action, and it happens because of what the characters are saying. Okay, Helene asks, does flat character literally live in real life? Remember what is a flat character? Flat character are those which seem too good or too bad. Yes, Helene, the flat characters really are there. They do exist in real life. Okay, yes. All right, so remember, guys, if you have questions, please remember to ask us so we can help you. So, okay, sometimes in a novel there may be a dialogue, although this is something which is predominantly in plays or dramas. So, I will not dwell on it. Let's just pass through it. You know, a dialogue occurs when there is a speaking between two characters. You know that, right? When two characters are speaking, that is a dialogue. Then we have a monologue, which occurs when a character speaks to a silent character. So that's a monologue, or when a character speaks to themselves, or when they think to themselves, is a monologue, right? Then a soliloquy occurs when a character is alone on stage and they address the audience about his or her thoughts and feelings. So this is also for the drama or play. So yes, that is something which they have in common, and that's something different about this literature text. Now, one of the most important things about the novel is the plot. Okay, so we have the plot. So the plot is the order in which things happen, the order in which things happen in a drama or in a play, and also in a novel or a story. Okay, let's say in a novel or story, right? So, right. So most plots they contain the following. Okay, so the beginning of the novel, so it should be novel there. So the beginning of the novel, right, where the characters and the setting is introduced, that is called the exposition. So you know that when you read a novel or a story, when it starts, it will introduce the characters. You know, usually the main character will be introduced at that point, as well as the setting of the story. Okay, yes. Then another thing is that the plot also contains the things that happen and the problems that arise to result in a conflict. Okay, so when the story develops, there are some things which will happen, and those things which happen will lead to problems, and those problems will result in what we call a conflict. Okay, yes, and that process, it is called the rising action. You know, so rising action, it really builds anticipation in the reader to want to read more. You know, as the reader, you will want to know more, you will want to read more, so that you will get to learn what really is happening, and so that you will get to learn what is going to happen later on in the story. Then after that, there will be a high point where something must be done about the conflict, and that high point is the climax. Okay, so you can think of a climax. So you can think of the climax as the highest point in the story. So you know that after the climax, the story will never escalate, but it will go down. Okay, so the climax really it is that the most interesting, the most anticipated part of the story, the most anticipated part of the novel. That is the climax, and it is as the climax where something must be done, where the protagonist must do something. Okay, the protagonist must do something at the climax. Okay, let's say for example, the antagonist or the bad guy kidnaps the antagonist's girlfriend or the antagonist's wife or the antagonist's mother. Okay, so what what the protagonist will do at this point, it is the climax. That is when the protagonist will have to decide what to do. Is the protagonist going to go and save his loved ones? Is the protagonist going to just sit down and do nothing? You know, things like that. Okay. Oh, okay, fine. Let me make the example interesting by saying this. Ne? Let us say the bad guy. Let us say that the bad guy has kidnapped the ex-girlfriend of our main character. You know. So now the main character now is really caught up. I mean, it is the main character's ex who had the main character. It is the one who's kidnapped. What then will the main character do? Will the main character leave her because she is because she is the main character's ex and she left him? Or will the main character still use that residual love he still has for her to go and save her? So that will be the climax. So that will be where the main character will need to decide what to do. All right, okay. So after that, there will be what we call the following action. So the following action is about how the climax affects the characters. How does this thing affect the main character? How does it affect other people who know this person who was kidnapped by the bad guy? Yes. Then after that, there'll be called what we call a resolution. That is when the plot is unraveled and the action is closed. So in our example, it will be when the main character will go to the antagonist, maybe fight with him, and be able to save his ex-girlfriend. Okay, so that will be the resolution of the plot, right? So if you listen carefully to this lesson, you realize that if you take this lesson seriously, it will better inform your reading of novels and you are more likely to enjoy the novel or the story that which you will be reading if you pay attention to the content of today's lesson. Right. So we talked about conflict, and there's something about a conflict is that a conflict is a challenge or a problem that a main character has to solve. Okay, so remember, if you have a question, the chat is open. Please use the chat to ask us your question. All right. Okay. So with conflict, it can be internal conflict or an external conflict. So with internal conflict, this is the conflict that occurs when the protagonist struggles with himself or herself and with doing what is right and morally acceptable. Okay, yes. So with internal conflict, like with the example that which I did, where the main character's ex-girlfriend has been kidnapped, what then should the main character do? So you will see that at that point it becomes an internal conflict. Why? Because the protagonist will be struggling within himself, you know struggling in the terms of, should the main character save his ex-girlfriend? I mean, why should he even save her? Because they are not in a relationship anymore. Maybe the ex-girlfriend is the one who broke up with him, all those things. So that becomes an internal conflict because he's caught up between doing what is right and what is morally acceptable. Okay, yes. Then we have external conflict, which occurs when the protagonist struggles and fights against other people, creatures, social ideas, and practices that he or she does not agree with. Okay, so then with that, this is really how it happens. Okay, so in so then in the example that which we have made, the external conflict is when the protagonist will have to confront the antagonist. Okay, so that is an external conflict. Okay, are you all together? Remember that if you have a question, please remember to ask us and we will get back to you. Right, then somebody asks about the background and the setting. Here's your answer. So the background and the setting, this is what it's all about. So the background and the setting, it is about the time when and the place where the story unfolds. Okay, let me underline them there. So the background and the setting is about the time when the story unfolds, and it is also about the place where the story unfolds. Okay, so background and setting, it includes things like the geographical place. Okay, like where is this novel happening? Is it in South Africa, America, India, China, Australia, Nigeria? You know, so that is the geographical place, right? But but sometimes it does happen that the background and the setting can be a fictional place. You know, it could be a place which doesn't exist in real life. You know, it could be a place that only existed in the mind of the author. All right. Yes. Right. So a certain period, okay, the background and the setting should also include a certain period of the year or a specific day or the time of day. Okay. I mean, if this story happens in January, it won't be the same as when it was happening in December, you know. So you will see that the background and the setting, it also has an impact. It influences how the novel goes, it influences how the story goes. Okay, another thing will be the weather conditions. Okay, like at that time of the year in that place, what are the weather conditions? Okay, is it raining, is it sunny, is there snow there, you know, things like that. Another thing will be the social condition as well as the cultural environment. Okay, so you would realize that also this also has, you know, an impact. Okay, so you will realize that a story which is based in a village will not be the same as the story which is based in a city. Why? Because the village and the city, they are not the same. Okay, so because of that, those social conditions and those cultural environment, they influence how the story is, and they also influence the characters. Okay, Helen asking a question saying, sir, how do you know the author wrote a good story? Or how do you write a good plot? So you realize that a good story will really capture your attention. You know, a good story will help you to make assumptions, it will help you to make predictions. But after you have made those assumptions, you will not close that book before you are done reading. Okay, even as much as you will make your own assumptions, you will also be interested to read to see if your assumptions are right. You'll also want to read for yourself so that you know what really happens. So that really what makes a good story, Helen. You know, a good story has to capture the attention and the interest of the reader. Yes. All right. Okay. So another person is what we call a narrator. So a narrator is the person who tells the audience the story. So you as the reader, there is a narrator, there would be a narrator who would be telling you the story, okay? And okay, and as a result, you as the reader, You will see the events of the story through the eyes of the narrator, and because of that, you will get to better understand the background of the action. Okay, so the narrator will be telling you the story, and you, as the reader, you will start to see the events through the eyes of the narrator. All right, yes. And another interesting things about narrators is sometimes a character from the story can become a narrator, and when it's that way, that character who is a narrator can be able to tell you some things that which you may have never known if that narrator was not there. All right, so the last feature would be the message or the theme. Right, yes. So the message or the theme, okay, so usually you realize that when you read a story, you learn about you learn about the environment, you learn about the country, or the certain types of people in that. Okay, so you will see that usually the ideas that the writer wants to communicate with the audience through the story, that is the message, and that is the theme. Okay, yes. So sometimes the title of a novel or a story, it gives us a clue about its message and theme. For example, if the title of my story is Love Conquers All Things, then you know, oh, okay, this book really has something to do with love, something like that. And sometimes, although novels and stories are written for fun and to entertain us, but usually you will realize that there are some important lessons that which we may learn from those stories. All right, okay. So that is the end of the lesson, and I'm left with a few minutes, which I will use to summarize the lesson. So this is what we learned about the novel, that the novel has these things: the character, the action, the dialogue, the plot, the conflict, the background, the setting, the narrator, as well as the theme. Okay, so these things, they really affect how the novel is written, how the story is written, as well as how you sorry as well as how you may read it. All right, okay. And I see there are some questions in the chat. Helene asks, said, do you have some good suggestions of good books for our age? So for that, Helene, I would say that go to your English grade 8 textbook, go to your textbook and look under term 2, week 7, 8, 9, or 10, and then there you will find something about a good book that which will be good for you to read. So I want you to start at the books that which you are advised to read at school first. We start there before we read all those other books which have nothing to do with our education. Okay, so read the books that which are prescribed in your textbook, and when you after you are done with them, then you can explore other books. Okay, yes. Yes, I know you do not use the same textbooks, but use the textbook that which you are using, just use it. Okay, yes. All right, so although the lesson is over although the lesson is over, but the conversation is not over. So you can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and also on YouTube. Use the hashtag lockdown eSchool. Speak to us. We want to hear your comments, your complaints, so that we can better save you, so that we can better help you. Okay, remember, by your comments, by your communication, that is when I can really improve with my teaching, with my presenting of lessons and content to you guys. Okay, so let us all meet again tomorrow, same time, same place. We will be doing something new. I hear there's some comments in the chat saying that you have enjoyed the lesson. Thank you so much. I'm glad you've enjoyed the lesson. I have also included, I have also enjoyed presenting it to you. So guys, this is the end of our lesson. Let us meet again tomorrow, same time, same place. It's going to be good. Come join us. You'll see what we are going to learn. We are going to become better communicators. We're going to be so much more better at the English language. So from us at STEM Lockdown Digital School, we love you. We say keep well, take care, enjoy your day. Let's meet again tomorrow. Goodbye.